Look at the picture. Let's go. Let's go.
Are we here? Hey, boys and girls, why has the frame rate gone to shit? Is that showing up on the stream? Yes, it is. Okay. Well, we're experiencing a low frame rate, Johnny, today, I guess. That's weird. Well, it fixed itself? I don't know. Let me get the music going. VLC media player. This is going to be another one of those low effort ones. I know we've had like 4 of those in a row, but we're having another one. God, it's fucking hot in here. Okay, move you. Nyash. How does one make this work? Okay. Why can't you just, okay, add directory, choose, yes, hello, okay, there we go, and there's the chat reader. The TTS was super quiet in the last stream, and I don't know why, so I guess we're just not going to worry about it. We're just not going to worry about it. Just not going to worry about it. All right, anyway, let's get to the desktop here. There you go. All right. Is this the, yeah. So I think to start off, so the next video is going to be going over this document, which is, let's see, can I see? It is the Science, A New Golden Age, a report to the President by Michael Krastios, Director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. So this is a very important document that is going over some very important scientific reforms. And, yeah, I guess I'm just gonna, today we're just gonna read the fucking thing, and then, I gotta stop swearing. We're gonna read the blessed thing, and then we're going to start thinking about a video on it. Just kind of going over my take on it. So let's begin. Science, A New Golden Age. The American story is one of boundless creativity and bold ambition, driven by an indomitable pioneering spirit that propels exploration and discovery. It is this spirit that illuminated the world with Edison's light bulb, carried the Wright brothers into the skies, and sent Armstrong to the moon. Today, a new frontier of scientific discovery lies before us. I gotta work on my Trump impression. That's another thing. Maybe that's another, whatever day of the week it is today, stream. He's just doing impressions. Dear Mr. President, 81 years ago, President Franklin D. Roosevelt, and this is going to be an endurance reading stream, so I'm going to have to spare my voice a little. No, I actually don't like to move it, actually. No, thank you. 81 years ago, President Franklin D. Roosevelt wrote a letter to Vannevar Bush, tasking him with reorganizing America's scientific enterprise after World War II. Bush's response was a report titled Science, the Endless Frontier. It established the federal government's role in supporting basic science, led to the creation of the National Science Foundation. Oh yeah, okay, Franklin D. Roosevelt. I was like, wait, for some reason yeah, okay. My fucking attention heads got locked in on Bush when Roosevelt is right there. I'm like, 80 years? What the fuck? I'm always locked in on that Bush. Oh. It established the federal government's role in supporting basic science, led to the creation of the National Science Foundation, and shaped our nation's science and technology strategy for decades afterward. That report was foundational to the American century and to the technological world in which we live today. Now, as we celebrate the United States' 250th anniversary, we have the responsibility to renew our foundations once more. Never have science and technology been more central to our nation's security and prosperity, and although America continues to set the pace of scientific progress, global competitors are racing to challenge our leadership. This historical moment demands that we modernize our institutions to match the achievements of our past and the ambitions of our future. In your letter of March 26, 2025, on the occasion of my Senate confirmation as Director of the Office of Science and Technology Policy, you challenged me to re-examine America's research and development ecosystem in light of changes brought on by the 21st century.
System initialized.
Thank you, Mr. Vader. The report I present here diagnoses the obstacles American researchers face today and the ways our scientific enterprise has fundamentally transformed since its basic organization was established in 1945. Though our investments in research have grown, scientific productivity is slowed. We have become dependent on a narrow set of legacy institutions. Our incentive structures reward conformity over bold inquiry, and the capacity that once turned American discoveries into American strength has eroded, undermined by decades of industrial offshoring. To address these and related challenges, this report puts forward recommendations for the entire scientific and technological ecosystem, across government, academia, philanthropy, and industry. Underlying all of these recommendations is a simple measure of success. A decade from now, American researchers should look back at our work and say, "The vital questions I could not pursue then, I am free to pursue now." That purpose will be achieved if we make progress towards 4 overarching goals. First, the U.S. research system should prioritize the individual scientist over legacy institutions. If we are serious about expanding what our scientists can do, we must invest directly in American researchers and the bold ideas that drive them. Too much of our research enterprise has come to serve itself rather than the scientists within it. Federal funding agencies should support a broader range of performers, including a new generation of mission-driven research organizations, to expand our scientific horizons. And these agencies should organize themselves around the interdisciplinary frontiers of science today, rather than the academic silos of the last century. Fuck yeah! Sorry, I should keep the commentary to a minimum, huh? Second, the federal government should fundamentally change how research dollars are allocated, distributed, and assessed. Instead of a one-size-fits-all approach, the government should fund more flexible types of grants, including fast-track grants, long-horizon grants, and new mechanisms that allow reviewers to champion radically unconventional proposals. Federal research agencies should evaluate their own performance as capital allocators, test new ways of making grants, and construct portfolios with the intentionality of a serious investor. Third, the federal government should set clear scientific goals and build the industrial muscle to translate scientific discovery into technological strength. The greatest technical achievements of the last century, such as No jokes. We're serious. Came about because leaders in government identified national priorities and marshaled the resources to accomplish them. As our competitors race us to capture the value chain of strategic technologies, he repeats himself a lot, including with tactics we would never countenance. We can no longer assume that the fruits of American science will accrue to our own people. Government must mobilize the full force of our enterprise around national challenges, clear the ground for American builders, and reunite the work of discovery and manufacturing across the country. Fourth, we must prepare our research enterprise for the AI revolution. AI will accelerate and radically transform the way we do science. But even the most capable AI models will be slowed down in the bottleneck of institutions and systems built for the last century. As we renew the infrastructure that powers American science, we must re-engineer it for the AI age. And even as AI compresses the time from question to answer, we will still need human hands to build the instrument or prototype. For now. We must build that capacity too, investing in advanced manufacturing, the skilled trades, and the vast pools of talent and tacit knowledge outside the traditional academic pipeline. In preparing this report, I have consulted widely across the country's scientific enterprise, from entrepreneurs driving world-changing breakthroughs in fusion technology to researchers eager to pursue bold ideas in neuroscience at our universities, to venture capitalists funding revolutionary platforms for drug discovery. Their message is clear and inspiring. Given the right conditions, American ingenuity will continue to achieve the impossible. Throughout our history, Americans have shown remarkable courage in their willingness to reinvent our institutions when the challenges we face demanded it, from establishing the land-grant university to creating the National Science Foundation to launching the Apollo program. Each generation has seized its opportunity to expand the frontiers of knowledge and lay down the paving stones of progress. Now it is our time to build the scientific enterprise that will carry America forward and bring prosperity to Americans through the 21st century and beyond. Mr. President, you have called for a golden age of American innovation. This report is the map to that vision. Our nation cured polio, placed men on the moon, decoded the human genome, and launched the digital revolution. With your leadership, we will extend our scientific and technological might into the second American century and continue to deliver the innovations and discoveries that define the modern world. Respectfully submitted, Michael J. Kratsios. To Donnie. President Trump's letter. Dear Mr. Kratsios, scientific progress and technological innovations with a twin... Okay, this is kind of fluff. Okay, summary of the report. American scientific progress was the beating heart of the 21st century. Get to the fucking point. It delivered to the victory... we developed the alchemy that taught sand how to think. I hate. It's overplayed. It was funny the first time. Conjuring the digital world from silicon chips, American science conquered polio, etc. Okay, repeating ourselves again. New challenges have risen in recent decades. Despite massive increases in biomedical funding since the 1990s, the rate of significant breakthroughs appears to have slowed, and drug approvals have flatlined. Researchers today often spend half their time on paperwork and administrative tasks, a burden worsened by expanding federal and university bureaucracies that further reduce funding available for actual science. A smaller proportion of American citizens now fill postgraduate spots in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM fields. Our competitors are channeling unprecedented resources into science and engineering, taking a whole-of-society approach to seize the high ground in strategic technologies. The AI revolution, meanwhile, is transforming the conduct of science, and legacy scientific institutions and infrastructure are not ready to take full advantage of this transformation. America has led the world in scientific progress because Americans have refused to stand still. We have adapted to changing conditions before by boldly reinventing how we structure science, and we must innovate again. Never has scientific and technological development been more essential to our national and economic security, and never has this progress been so deeply intertwined with our diplomatic relationships worldwide. President Trump has been very clear about his priorities as he seeks to lay the foundations for a new golden age of American innovation. He has asked this administration to revitalize the national science enterprise, to secure U.S. leadership in emerging technologies against foreign rivals, and to ensure that all of America's citizens will benefit from new scientific breakthroughs and technological transformations. The president understands the American story as one of ambition, discovery, and invention, of pioneers who forever seek new frontiers for exploration, particularly now in science and technology. The following chapters provide recommendations, insights, and guidance to the entire U.S. scientific enterprise, from the government to universities to the private sector and philanthropy. Chapter 2. Revitalizing America's Science and Technology Enterprise. To reverse stagnation and restore breakthrough momentum, the federal government must free American scientists to do their best work. Federal funding in academia remains anchored to mid-century assumptions, channeled through traditional disciplines, and overly focused on short, project-based grants, as opposed to Project Cringe grants. No jokes. Review panels often gatekeep proposals by consensus, disincentivizing transformative ideas. Agencies face little corrective pressure. Bratty agency needs correction. When portfolios underperform. We must strip away unnecessary burdens, realign funding towards excellence and risk-taking, and embed continuous evidence-based improvement across an approximately $200 billion annual R&D portfolio. Refocus on the individual scientist. Put the working researcher back at the center of America's scientific enterprise. Free them from the growing administrative burdens that now weigh them down for nearly half their working hours. Bet on people, not just projects, by expanding portable graduate fellowships like the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program, backing early career independence and scaling long horizon grants for the best and brightest modeled on National Institutes of Health Directors Pioneer Award. Open alternative pathways beyond standard academia and ensure that selection rests purely on merit, not the political fashions of the day. Diversify funding mechanisms. Move beyond consensus-driven peer review by... Oh, fuck, he's going after peer review. Okay. Diversify funding mechanisms. Move beyond consensus-driven peer review by adopting a broader menu of selection mechanisms suited to different kinds of science. Examples include golden tickets that empower individual reviewers to champion ambitious proposals, fast grants that deliver rapid funding decisions, prize challenges and advanced market commitments that pay for results, and re-granting models that delegate funding authority to scientists to draw and distribute expertise. Create new institutional models. Many of today's most important problems are too large for an academic lab, too cross-disciplinary for a single department, and too hard to commercialize for a private corporation. Federal funding should support a wider range of performers. The recently launched X Labs can assemble agile, time-bound teams of professional scientists and engineers to break specific bottlenecks. Advanced Research Projects Agencies, or ARPAs, can empower individual program managers to make bold bets and curate researchers to execute them. Curiosity-driven institutes can give our best minds the stability needed to pursue fundamental questions over long time horizons. Reduce bureaucratic burdens. Requirements on federal grants have ballooned over past decades. Some grants now take nearly 2 years from submission to award, almost as long as it took to design and produce the first Boeing 747. Compress review cycles, eliminate duplicative reporting, and rein in indirect cost recovery that supports administrative bloat, redirecting that money to real scientific infrastructure. Advance reforms that reduce grant writing burdens with relief directed specifically to early career. Advance reforms that reduce grant writing burdens. This is a poorly constructed sentence. With relief directed specifically to early career researchers. Institutionalize continuous improvement. Funders should bring the same critical attention to their own performance that they are supposed to bring to the review of grant applications. Stand up an empowered meta-science unit in federal science agencies, reporting directly to the director, with authority to run controlled experiments on review and funding mechanisms and to drive change across the organization. Elevate the prestige of program officers, grow their discretion in setting scientific direction, and support them as the architects of the fields they help shape. Chapter 3. Securing U.S. dominance in critical and emerging Securing U.S. dominance in critical and emerging technologies. America has the world's most vibrant scientific enterprise and most dynamic private sector, which routinely turns novel ideas into new industries. But scientific leadership alone does not guarantee national strength or economic vitality. We must tightly couple our science and technology enterprises to ensure that groundbreaking ideas invented in the United States are rapidly prototyped, tested, manufactured, and scaled domestically. Restore permissionless innovation. American regulators have grown skilled at weighing the risks of action, but blind to the costs of inaction. Developing good rules requires real-world evidence, and building that evidence base only comes from letting innovators prototype and experiment. Extend the president's reforms in nuclear, pharmaceuticals, and drones across other sectors. Weigh benefits alongside risks, streamline permitting, and use regulatory sandboxes to test new technologies under controlled conditions. Open federal infrastructures to American builders. The federal government has facilities and test beds no startup can replicate on its own. Broaden industry access to America's laboratory research infrastructure, including at Department of Energy National Laboratories, National Aeronautics and Space Administration centers, and Department of War facilities. Consider innovative potential alongside scientific merit and use approvals. Streamline cooperative research and development agreements and licensing, further leverage other transaction authority. Oh my god. To enable private sector engagement in co-designing research directions and expand partnerships with the private sector to make joint investments into cutting-edge equipment. Strengthen public-private partnerships and talent flows. The university is no longer the only home of America's most innovative scientific research. Expand agency-adjacent foundations, focus small business innovation research and small business technology transfer programs to build strategic capabilities, and support joint centers among industry, academia, and federal facilities. Scale industry PhD and postdoc fellowships that move talent fluidly between sectors, drawing on America's private sector strengths to bring industry-scale resources to our academic researchers. Organize pre-competitive consortia and grand challenges. The Apollo program and the Human Genome Project succeeded because the federal government marshaled scientific effort at a scale no single institution could match. Leverage grand challenges that pull breakthroughs forward and create moonshot-scale missions for issues of national importance. Support industry consortia and use federal resources to break shared engineering bottlenecks in foundational areas, as Extreme Ultraviolet Limited Liability Company, EUV LLC, did for semiconductor lithography. So lithography is, long story short, the art of taking material and you coat it with a coating that resists acid. You shine a patterned ultraviolet light on it to harden that coating. You wash off everything you didn't pattern with the UV, and then you dunk it in acid. That eats away the parts that you don't want, leaves the parts you do. You scrape that resist off. That's what we call it, the UV plastic. It's plastic. It's UV activated plastic, just like an FDM, not FDM, the other one, SLA printer, 3D printer. So there's only one company in the world that makes cutting edge EUV machines, and it ain't American. So this guy wants to change that. Use counties and states as laboratories. Federalism is one of America's greatest assets. Holy shit. It's surprising to hear people saying that. States can experiment with regulation, permitting, and economic incentives in ways the federal government cannot replicate. Support state-led experimentation, partner with the jurisdictions that move the fastest, and let localities compete to support regional innovation. Ensure that innovation strategies that work spread across the nation, advancing science and technology in every county and state. Chapter 4. Ensuring that science and technology better the lives of all Americans. America's scientific creativity and entrepreneurial culture position us to translate breakthroughs into technologies that enrich every American's life. That enrichment should include the creation of manufacturing jobs, not just the development of consumer products. By rebuilding the link between science and hands-on craft, federal leadership can ensure that the economic returns of discovery, including the jobs, supplier networks, and process knowledge encoded in the hands of workers, accrue to Americans in every region of the country and every sector of the economy, sustaining our technological leadership for generations to come. Integrate hands-on training. Technology is encoded not just in papers and patents, but in the tacit knowledge passed from mentor to mentee. Require universities and community colleges to embed practical technical training and externships into STEM curricula. Let hands-on experience and industry credentials count toward degrees. Holy shit. Like, that's one sentence, but that's a big deal. Reform accreditation, admissions, and tenure to reward real-world technical work alongside academic publication. Holy shit. I mean, yeah, because as a software engineer, I'm somewhat insulated from this, But like among like mechanical engineers, there is a big disconnect between the thinkers and the doers. They kind of hate each other. You can see videos on this by like machinists saying, I got these drawings from this engineer. How the fuck does he expect me to actually make this? Like he designed a hole that you cannot possibly drill. What the fuck? So this guy wants to attack that by saying, hey, going into the machine shop and doing some machining and actually understanding how the things you design actually get made, we want that to count towards your degree. That's a big fucking deal. Because it's not like engineers don't want to go down to the shop. I mean, I'm sure some of them don't, but I'm sure there's plenty of engineers who do want to go down to the shop and see, okay, how do we actually make these things? But the system disincentivizes it. So he wanted to change it so the system does incentivize it. The system disincentivizes it because the time you spent actually learning could have been spent on fake credentials. So get rid of the fake credentials and credential actual experience. Open scientific careers beyond the academic ladder. Establish national fellowships for skilled craftspeople, practitioner and residence programs embedding machinists and technicians alongside PhD researchers, and portable industry-recognized credentials in advanced manufacturing and lab techniques. That's interesting. So they want to build like a credentialing system where you get your federal machinist's card and then that's good everywhere. I don't think anything like that exists, and that does seem like a good idea. I mean, I can see how it would go wrong, but I can also see how it would go right? Connect hobbyists and tinkerers in rural communities to formal research opportunities and open up universities to technical training for local residents. That seems like maybe a little bit of a pipe dream, like really cool if he can actually pull that off. But, well, I guess we'll have to see. Modernize apprenticeships and career pathways. Extend registered apprenticeships into science and technology fields. Adopt pay for performance funding models, such as scale workforce Pell Grants. What's a workforce Pell Grant? I know what a Pell Grant is. That's the federal loan they give you to go to college. What's a workforce Pell Grant? I guess we can look it up. Workforce Pell Grant. Workforce Pell Grant. Let's see. Okay, this is a new thing. U.S. Department of Education issues final rule to create new Workforce Pell Grant program. Today, the U.S. Department of Education announced a final rule to implement the Workforce Pell Grant program created under Trump's historic Working Families Tax Cuts Act. Beginning on 1st of 2026, students will be able to receive Pell Grants for enrollment in high-quality short-term educational programs. Okay, how do you define that? This advances the vision of ATS. Prioritizing career education. Okay. Currently, institutions of higher education award federal Pell Grants to students with financial need to help them earn undergraduate credentials. So you can only, you get the money, but you can only use it to get like an academic degree. You can use it to get a degree in underwater basket weaving, but you can't use it to pay for, mechanic school or machine tool, like machining technical school. That's the word I was looking for. Workforce Pell bridges the gap between education and employment by allowing Pell Grants to be used for workforce training programs that prepare individuals for immediate employment in as little as 8 weeks. Well, that sounds absolutely fucking kick-ass. I'm excited for that to kick in. I wish that was available when I was getting my fucking education, because I didn't get shit. And back community colleges as regional hubs of scientific and technical talent. Integrate these hubs with industry sites and federally funded innovation and manufacturing centers. Build dense local innovation clusters across the nation. Technological leadership emerges from places where research and production sit close together. Expand regional innovation hubs, manufacturing institutes, and defense industrial base centers to anchor regional ecosystems. Drive coordinated efforts with local universities and national laboratories to build specializations and workforce pipelines. Pair these efforts with the reshoring of advanced manufacturing and restore the feedback loops between researchers, engineers, and skilled technicians. Chapter 5, A New Golden Age. America stands at the cusp of a revolution in science in which AI will accelerate discovery, multiply human cognitive capabilities, and unlock solutions to some of our greatest challenges. I need to lower my voice a little, it's starting to get tired. But AI for science will still find itself subject to the frictions and inefficiencies of human institutions. We can only fully harness AI and its associated productivity uplift by boldly reforming our scientific institutions, building national-scale infrastructure, and ensuring rigorous verification of the knowledge base from which AI will learn. Interesting. Are they working on, like, federal development of AI data sets? That's cool. That might be a big deal. Because it's all about data quality. A lot of these labs, they're like, oh, I mean, they know what they're doing. But a lot of people are like, oh yeah, you just jam more data into the thing. Well, I forget the name. It was an experiment Microsoft did where they trained a model from nothing, only on like scientific textbooks, and it came out about as smart as a model that was trained on 100 times as much random text from the internet. So I think it really is more about quality than quantity. And if we have federal investment in AI training data sets, well, that's a big deal. Also, if we commonize it at the federal level, that means that we aren't duplicating a bunch of work between, OpenAI, Anthropic, and whatever X is doing. The also ran of the AI world, but they are number 3. Like I'm sure there's plenty of intelligent people at XAI. It's just objectively they aren't Anthropic or OpenAI, you know? Fully fund and expand the Genesis mission is America's flagship AI for science initiative, integrating supercomputers, AI models, scientific instruments, and datasets across national laboratories to double the productivity and impact of U.S. science within a decade. That's a very specific goal. How are you going to accomplish that? Directed at cross-cutting problems where breakthroughs unlock entire branches of downstream discovery and where AI can transform the practice of science itself. Institutionalize gold standard science. AI operating on a flawed knowledge base will only entrench bad science. Enforce reproducibility, transparency, data sharing, and falsifiability across all federally funded research through the Restoring Gold Standard Science Executive Order, creating a trusted foundation for AI-powered discovery. The other thing is there is, whatever word we're using for it, woke, crypto-fascist, communist, whatever you want to call it, there are efforts among that political group to corrupt AI datasets, and they've been pretty effective. So I'm interested in hearing if they have a plan to try and mitigate that. They call it AI ethics because, being a good heckin' person and all that. But that's what they mean, is making the AI woke, making it... because it's very difficult to get an AI to be racist in the right ways. Like, you can train it to think that racism is always bad. That's not very hard. But it's like, okay, well, we still want to allow racism against white people, of course. And it's like, well, why? Like, I'm supposed to guess what this guy's race is before I filter his comment? What the fuck? Build verification infrastructure at scale. While the cost of generation has decreased exponentially, the cost of verification has not. Invest in AI-enabled verification systems, open standards, and continuous replication mechanisms. Set standards to enable the development of machine-auditable replication packages and reward those who replicate or disprove influential scientific results. That's the other big thing in our science system, is there's no reward for checking someone else's work. So stuff will come out, there'll be one study on it, and then we just have that one study. And then other scientists will try to do the same experiment to see if it got the same result. It doesn't get the same result, so they hide it because that doesn't advance your career. So if we set up systems to actively reward replications and refutations, that's a big deal. Accelerate autonomous experimentation. Closed-loop autonomous laboratories can collapse discovery timelines by orders of magnitude and enable science at a truly industrial scale. Focus investments in robotics and automated laboratories, leveraging industry demand and federal R&D to ensure our scientific equipment industrial base is built on the world's best hardware and software and leads the charge in the coming scientific revolution. Experiment with AI-native scientific institutions. Today's funding structures, publication systems, and credit mechanisms were built for a world of human-paced discovery. Begin the transition to AI-native institutions, including through faster and more open forms of scientific publication, more granular credit attribution, and new market mechanisms that direct resources to problems where breakthroughs matter most. Yeah, we absolutely need scientific publication reform, too. Because I don't know if you've ever tried to look up a scientific paper. Sometimes you can. Usually they're paywalled. Scientific progress remains essential. 81 years ago, Vannevar Bush wrote that scientific progress would be an essential key to our security as a nation, to our better health, to more jobs, to a higher standard of living, and to our cultural progress. Bush had seen a glimpse of science's promise for America in the triumphs of penicillin and radar in securing victory in World War II. His vision proved prescient through the 8 decades that followed. God, has it really been 80 years since World War II? We still fucking talk about it. Since then, incredible breakthroughs have emerged from our nation's laboratories. I mean, we're still not over it, is my point. Although, if you remember those Feral Outlaws videos where he started saying, it seems like we've finally started getting over World War II. I don't know, 80 years, that's about a human lifetime. I guess that makes sense. Since then, incredible breakthroughs have emerged from our nation's laboratories: the transistor and the integrated circuit, the laser and the LED, the mapping of the human genome, and the tools to edit it. The new products, new industries, and more jobs Bush envisioned have materialized as entire economic sectors, such as computing, biotechnology, aerospace, and telecommunications, which today employ tens of millions and generate trillions in wealth. Enabled by technologies unimaginable in Bush's time, the energy revolution has made America the world's largest oil and gas producer. Now, small computers in our pockets connect us instantly to family across the continent, unlock the world's knowledge, and guide us through unfamiliar streets. Great advances in materials science have given us everything from nylon stockings to bulletproof vests, artificial joints, and fighter jets. We place GPS satellites in orbit that guide our tractors to precision planting, our packages to on-time arrival, and our troops through hostile terrain. We established the field of modern biotechnology, invented MRI, and developed the lithium batteries that power our cordless world. And in mere decades after Bush's letter, we walked on the moon and sent scientific instruments to the edge of the solar system. Our scientists have achieved even more than this. We often forget that American farmers have tripled their output while using a quarter of the labor used in the 1940s. Or that the average American lives more than 10 years longer than when Bush penned his report. Within living memory, cancer has been transformed from a death sentence to a treatable condition for millions of Americans. The most common form of childhood leukemia has gone from universally fatal to curable in 90% of cases, and deaths from heart disease have fallen by more than half since their peak. These triumphs happened here in America only because of intentional choices made by our people and institutions. First, consistent with what Bush outlined in his essay, the government played a vital role in supporting the scientific enterprise to achieve national goals. These include conquering disease, creating jobs, and ensuring security. Against the backdrop of pre-war federal research funding, which was largely focused on agriculture, this proved to be a key insight. Not all valuable research attracts private capital, particularly research that promises only slow, diffuse returns. In the capital environment of the mid-20th century, no investor would have funded efforts to build particle accelerators or discover the fundamental insights that underlie the genomic revolution. As Bush argued, there are areas of science in which the public interest is acute, but which are likely to be cultivated inadequately if left without more support than will come from private sources. Today, we benefit from that insight with an extensive set of federal organizations to advance scientific research, including NSF, DOE National Laboratories, NIH, NASA, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, among other research arms of federal departments and agencies. Second, our government recognized that achieving those national purposes requires more coordination than any single institution can provide, and that our unique advantage, whether in defeating the Soviet Union or winning the technological race today, lies in our dynamic private sector. Describing the development of penicillin, Bush spoke of how the government launched a coordinated attack on special problems, supporting research and development along medical schools, universities, and the pharmaceutical industry, and helping ideas progress from early laboratory experimentation to large-scale production and use. This model became the foundation of the fruitful public-private partnerships that sent Americans to the moon and built the internet. This dynamism between publicly funded science and private enterprise remains the engine of American innovation. Third, we stayed true to the call for science to remain dynamic. The pioneer spirit is still vigorous within this nation, Bush wrote. Science offers a largely unexplored hinterland for the pioneer who has the tools for his task. Each of our past triumphs required substantial courage and institutional transformation. They compelled us to invent new models to drive scientific progress, dedicated science funding agencies, innovative partnerships that enabled the widespread commercialization of modern electronics, and reforms like the deregulation of space that opened the door to today's vibrant era of a commercial spaceflight. This willingness to venture into unknown territory, to challenge established methods, to challenge established methods and to create new institutions when old ones prove inadequate, built the scientific supremacy that undergirds our vibrant economy and national security today. All right, my voice is worn out now, so I'm going to take a quick break. Oops, you weren't supposed to see that. It wasn't a big deal. Let's see if I remember how to run my break program. I will be back in about 15 minutes, or whatever the default setting on my break card program is. See, wait for it to kick in. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Let's pick up where we left off. The landscape is changing. The principles that government must support basic research, that this research drives national prosperity, and that America's advantage lies in the dynamism of our institutions remain as sound today as when Bush first articulated them. But principles are not processes. Shut the fuck up. Who is dinging my phone? Who has done this? Ooh, we gotta see. Oh my god, leave me alone. Hang on, I gotta silence this. You guys can't see the... I hate phones. I hate them. How do I switch back to the... There. Now you can actually see. Alright. The principles that government must support basic research, that this research drives national prosperity, and that America's advantage lies in the dynamism of our institutions, remain as sound today as when Bush first articulated them. But principles are not processes. Bush would be the first to recognize that the landscape in which fundamental research is conducted has completely transformed since he wrote Science: The Endless Frontier. In 1950, a dozen engineers in basic laboratories drove progress in semiconductors. Today, the semiconductor industry invests more than $100 billion in capital and R&D each year, and employs hundreds of thousands. They regularly solve physics and materials problems at the edge of possibility and build fabrication plants filled with robots that manipulate silicon atom by atom. In 1950, scientists mailed typewritten manuscripts to journal editors who sent copies to reviewers from their personal networks at top universities. Today, researchers post papers online within hours of completion. Thousands read and debate the merits of the work immediately on social media and in discussion channels. Code gets replicated on the internet months before the paper appears in print. In 1950, mathematicians worked alone with chalkboards and stacks of papers from the library. Today, they look up theorems instantly online. Computers enable experimental mathematics that would have been impossible with pencil and paper. Software languages modularize massive proofs, letting dozens of mathematicians collaborate on a single problem simultaneously from coast to coast. New frontiers and new approaches. The institutions we build determine what problems get solved, which approaches get tried, what risks get taken, and whose talent contributes to discovery. When these institutions align with the nature of the scientific frontier and with our national needs, science advances. When they are misaligned, abundant resources and brilliant researchers go to waste. The misalignment shows up as diminishing returns to R&D investments, a decline in the pursuit of breakthrough ideas, and a slowdown in the benefits that technological progress delivers to the American people. Institutional design matters because individual researchers follow the signals their institutions send. Consider the incentives of a talented researcher working at the frontier of quantum information science. As a PhD student in a university lab, this researcher must publish regularly to graduate, craft narratives that satisfy journal reviewers and his dissertation committee, and build the personal connections that lead to academic jobs. His professor's grant funding limits what equipment he can afford. He designs experiments around the apparatus in his lab more than the questions most worth asking. With 2 years until graduation, he actively looks for results that advance his dissertation's narrative. When unexpected results appear, he sometimes chooses to pursue them, but remains cognizant of potential risks to his professional progress and to his lab's future funding. As a startup founder raising venture capital, the same researcher faces different pressures. He pitches a bold vision of scalable quantum computing to investors. He can hire engineers and build quickly with tens of millions of dollars in seed funding, but he must also deliver revenue within 5 years and sustain a clear narrative as funding rounds continue. The technical approach he outlined to investors may not be the best path forward, but changing course risks losing investor confidence. Market pressure imposes scientific constraints that grant reviewers might not. Both paths advance science and technology, but both both paths advance science and technology, but both channel talent towards different problems in different ways. The discoveries that get made depend not only on the questions that are scientifically salient, but on the fit between those questions and the incentives researchers must navigate. It therefore falls to the public officials who steward federal funding as the architects of the national scientific enterprise to understand the constraints our researchers face, to create the right incentive structures wherever possible, and to drive R&D in whatever gaps remain. Only then can we unleash American scientists and give them ever greater freedom to explore. Universities remain essential for training scientists and pursuing fundamental questions. Venture capital mobilizes private resources towards high-impact technologies. Federal agencies fund research that markets alone will not support. Each serves an essential purpose, but the scientific frontier is constantly shifting, requiring vigilant self-improvement to ensure these institutions remain suited to answering the most important questions today. Suited to answering the most important questions today. He had a dangling the. The system that emerged from Bush's vision served the last American century. But every generation of Americans must show the courage to reinvent our institutions when the frontier demands it. We established land-grant universities when agriculture needed scientific foundations. We created DARPA when the pursuit of breakthrough military technologies required an agency willing to fund high-risk ideas that traditional funders would reject. We developed the venture capital model when a gap emerged between the long time horizons of emerging technology companies and the capacity of traditional capital markets. The questions demanding answers, the tools required to answer them, the scale of coordination needed, and the timelines involved all shift as knowledge advances. As our predecessors did, we must continue to craft and refine the machinery of science, allowing each component to work to full advantage and freeing our innovators from pressures that keep them from the greatest goals. A new American century will require new engines of scientific discovery. Growing private sector R&D. One particularly visible shift in the scientific machine is who funds and performs research. When Bush penned his report in the middle of the 20th century, the federal government stood as the dominant patron of American science, marshaling the nation's research capacity for victory in war. The landscape today would astonish him. Private industry has become by far the largest source of R&D funding in the United States, with its share roughly doubling from the 1950s to today, even as federal funding has grown by leaps and bounds. American companies now deploy around $700 billion annually, more than triple the spending of government in higher education. While this investment has historically been dominated by late-stage product development, strikingly, the share devoted to basic research, which Bush thought markets could not sustain alone, has also grown rapidly, particularly over the past 2 decades. Consider 2 transformative inventions of recent memory, the transistor and the transformer architecture that underpins modern machine learning. Both came from corporate laboratories that employ thousands of researchers who often produce collaborative, well-cited papers on the problems of deep intellectual interest. Modern industrial powerhouses fund the state-of-the-art experiments and pay salaries tens or hundreds of times more than the academy, drawing top talent from across the country. Researchers at American companies have earned Nobel Prizes for work on electron tunneling and semiconductors, surface chemistries, polymer science, and lasers, a testament to both the rigor of their research and the fundamental nature of their work. Taking a swig of beer to soothe the vocal cords here. This is not a sign that the academy has become less important, but rather that the scientific world has expanded. In certain domains, the scale of private investment dwarfs anything federal agencies can match. Universities face real limits in scaling up engineering efforts, with rare exceptions for government-sponsored big science projects like space probe and particle accelerators. Yet PhD students and professors can now raise hundreds of millions of dollars to found companies that pursue fundamental breakthroughs. Small startups increasingly perform basic research themselves, giving our most talented scientists new paths for ambitious work. These firms blur the distinction between basic and applied science, combining research and development to accelerate both. The linear model no longer holds. In his 1945 report, Vannevar Bush presented a progression from basic research through applied research to development, later termed the linear model. This framework laid out a clear role for each part of the research and development pipeline. Universities would pursue fundamental understanding without the pressure of practical application, yet industry would turn discoveries into products. At the time, the separation was natural and productive. Modern discovery, however, is increasingly shaped by continuous iteration between fundamental and applied work. Engineering challenges routinely expose unanswered scientific questions. And breakthroughs in basic understanding, in turn, open new engineering pathways. The relationship is recursive rather than unidirectional. The tools required to push the frontier, whether advanced fabrication equipment or specialized engineering teams, are often found outside traditional academic settings. Many of our most productive researchers now move fluidly between sectors, carrying ideas and techniques with them. Technology and science have become deeply interdependent, even, as we will discuss in Chapter 5. I thought this was Chapter 5. Oh, this is Chapter 1 of the... What? Oh my god, right, this paper is like 123 pages long. We're not going to make it through this whole thing, but we'll make it through as much as we can. Can't even talk. In the purest fields of reason like mathematics. This nonlinearity is also captured by the framework Donald Stokes articulated half a century after Bush. Pasteur's quadrant, as he termed it, now defines a growing share of the scientific frontier. Stokes argued that research can seek fundamental understanding while being motivated by considerations of use, observing that some of the most consequential scientific advances all arose precisely from this combination. Examples of such research include Pasteur's investigations into why wine spoiled, the development of the transistor at Bell Labs, and Shannon's work on information theory. Many of the transformative discoveries of our own era, from the computational study of protein folding that earned the 2024 Nobel Prize in Chemistry to the superconducting quantum devices that earned the 2025 Nobel Prize in Physics, emerged from efforts that were at once theoretically ambitious and deeply connected to practical problems. Our national laboratories and federally funded research centers have long been engines for this use-inspired research, and new centers of modern science reflect the same pattern. A greater share of scientists are leaving academia for industry, not because they have abandoned curiosity-driven inquiry, but because the tools, resources, and career opportunities required to pursue certain fundamental questions increasingly lie outside university walls. The task ahead is to enable scientists to move fluidly between the problems of different shapes and to give them freedom and resources to pursue discovery at today's frontier. Our researchers face mounting challenges. These rapid changes demand that our institutions adapt. As will be addressed in Chapter 2, significant portions of our federal funding apparatus remain anchored to outdated assumptions. This is not an indictment of the talented scientists and grant makers who staff these bureaucracies, but a product of institutional inertia, born from the lack of market selection pressure that drives constant experimentation. NSF, for instance, still organizes itself primarily around academic disciplines, much as it did in the 1950s, and channels resources overwhelmingly to a single type of performer, the university-based principal investigator-led research group. Many federal programs are still built around the linear model, making the assumption that basic research happens in academia while development happens in industry. Academic incentives often penalize rather than reward partnerships that cross institutional boundaries. Agencies face little external pressure to adapt, even as the scientific landscape transforms around them, preserving processes essentially unchanged for decades. Within academia itself, well-documented inefficiencies compound these structural problems. Administrative burdens on researchers have grown over time. One study found that investigators spend nearly half of their federally funded research time on paperwork rather than on research or teaching. Universities also extract significant overhead from researchers, which funds a mix of legitimate shared infrastructure and growing administrative bloat. Effective indirect cost rates at NIH-funded institutions average more than 40%, even though those same institutions frequently accept 10 to 15% overhead from private funders. The assumptions embedded in our federal grant-making institutions and the creeping inefficiencies within the universities they predominantly serve reinforce one another. While researchers themselves recognize the need for renewal, few administrations have had the will and mandate to pursue transformative change. On the global stage, America no longer stands alone as the unchallenged leader in science and technology. The United States risks losing its first position to competitors that are quicker to update their models of research funding, maintain greater institutional flexibility, and can build tighter connections between different sectors of their scientific enterprise. Over the past 20 years, China's R&D spending has surged from a negligible fraction of U.S. levels to full parity on a purchasing power adjusted basis by some metrics. Purchasing power adjustment just means, like, they're not spending the same amount of dollars, but labor is cheaper there, so they get the same amount. That's basically what that means. This is a situation America did not face even during the Cold War, when the Soviet Union's economy was appreciably smaller than our own. Beyond the sheer scale of its spending, Beijing is treating scientific research capacity as a central pillar of global competition, elevating decision-making to the highest level and taking a highly integrated approach to partnerships across its sectors. This all-of-society approach has allowed China to surge resources towards basic scientific research, advance rapidly in technologies of key national interest, and drive improvements in its innovation process, where entrenched interests have resisted change. You can she, as in Xi Jinping. Yeah, I'm a poet and I don't know it. Billions of current PPP dollars. You can see the EU is this guy, I guess. The EU ain't doing shit. This is us. And China has caught up by 2024. That sucks. China is not the only country reforming its scientific enterprise. The United Kingdom, for example, has restructured its funding system to address internal inefficiencies, including creating a meta-science unit to collect data and develop novel funding mechanisms. Norway has organized its National Research Council around a portfolio-based model, with boards that allocate funding across thematic priorities drawn from the government's long-term research plan, alongside disciplinary portfolios. With new ideas bubbling up across the world and within our own vibrant philanthropic, metascience, and academic communities, it falls on the United States as the world's premier scientific power to take a hard look at how we can accelerate our own scientific machine as well. Beyond strengthening science, we also have a duty to ensure that its downstream benefits accrue to the American people first. For decades, the United States has funded large cohorts of foreign students and tolerated technology transfer abroad under lax security standards. As of 2024, temporary visa holders accounted for around half of U.S. doctoral graduates in computer science and mathematics, with confirmed post-graduation plans. This reliance on foreign talent sidelines American students, a deep domestic talent pool that remains undersupported by its own government. At the same time, we train extraordinary global talent at enormous expense, only to lose this effort when foreign governments recruit them to build up their own technological enterprises. The interest of vast scores of Americans in using taxpayer dollars to invest in our STEM pipeline has, consequently, eroded. America's over-reliance on foreign students also creates a security challenge our institutions are ill-equipped to address. While our R&D ecosystem is now less vulnerable to exploitation due to presidential actions taken in the first Trump administration, there is an urgent need for a comprehensive approach to research security. Our competitors have learned to exploit a deep asymmetry between open and closed scientific systems, using our education system as an entry point into our innovation base, while building domestic programs that undermine global scientific norms. The United States conducts research openly, publishes freely, and shares methods transparently. These values are central to scientific progress. However, there is a critical difference between sharing information on one's own terms and being exploited. The parts of a scientific enterprise that are not shared are often its comparative advantages. These are precisely what our competitors work hardest to extract, leveraging human capital educated in our universities, harvesting data from our papers while restricting access to their own, and scaling breakthroughs that first achieved in our laboratories on their factory floors. For too long, the United States has believed that technological leadership can be secured solely by discoveries made in America, regardless of whether those discoveries are then translated into products, capabilities, and industries here or on foreign soil. The consequences of this unguarded openness in laboratories and in markets has been severe. The United States pioneered many key enabling technologies for extreme ultraviolet lithography, yet the only company capable of manufacturing EUV lithography machines today is headquartered in Europe. We pioneered lithium-ion batteries, yet Asian firms dominate global supply chains and, by extension, battery chemistry research. We developed advanced manufacturing techniques that now underpin factories abroad. Discovery without domestic manufacturing leaves America paying the research bill while rivals develop the process improvements and capture the economic, strategic, and knowledge returns. You can see this figure shows the proportion of doctorates awarded to temporary visa holders. It's like 40%, yeah. The President's Charge. As our competitors copy and adapt our scientific machine for themselves, sustained leadership requires us to keep innovating. Standing still while the world changes is not stability. The Manhattan Project succeeded not only because of brilliant physicists, but because we built new institutions capable of coordinating the activity of thousands across the basic science and immense engineering challenges needed to build the bomb. The Apollo program reached the moon because NASA could marshal resources and talent in ways no university or company could match. Each represented not merely new funding, but fundamentally new ways of organizing scientific work. We must face the reality that more innovation is happening in industry than ever before, and that the balance and nature of work shared across the federal, university, and corporate pillars of the national research enterprise have shifted. We must acknowledge, too, that the linear model of discovery and technical progress no longer holds. The interplay between basic research, regular professional science, and commercialization is far more complex than had been assumed. Meanwhile, the context in which the American innovation enterprise operates has become global and therefore intensely vulnerable. The technologies we invent rely on production chains that stretch across the world. They are subject to theft by near-peer competitors. Finally, the technological context in which science is conducted and shared has been radically transformed by the internet and current information technologies, now changing even more with the rise of AI. Throughout our history, Americans have reinvented, reformed, and refounded our institutions when the moment demanded it. Each generation of American scientists, inventors, and pioneers have seized the opportunity to expand the frontiers of knowledge. On the occasion of America's 250th anniversary, we must remember that ours is a republic defined by courage, innovation, and exploration. Just as scientific inquiry demands that we revise our theory when evidence contradicts them, evidence of scientific slowdown and serious competition from abroad should spur us to experiment with new systems, new models, and new ways of funding, conducting, and translating research. Vannevar Bush's pioneering spirit calls us to do what he would surely do today: reimagine the entire enterprise for our time. Chapter 2. Revitalizing America's science and technology enterprises. The scientific machine is getting bogged down. It's been bogged. For the better part of a century? For the better part of a century, the American I may be reaching the limits of my endurance here, but we'll try to push on. For the better part of a century, one of America's most decisive advantages has been the ability to harvest novel discoveries for the prosperity of the American people. This advantage stemmed from the strength of our post-war innovation ecosystem, our universities, our national laboratories, and the symbiotic relationship between federal funding and research. As Bush wrote in 1945, a nation which depends on others for its new basic scientific knowledge will be slow in industrial progress and weaken its competitive position in world trade regardless of its mechanical skill. However, our scientific dominance today is at risk. While our capacity to drive breakthroughs in basic science remains the envy of the world, as described in Chapter 1, competitors are closing the gap. And while federally funded science continues to generate a high return on investment for our taxpayers, a growing body of work provides evidence that, across many fields, our researchers are fighting against an increasingly calcified system that has driven up the cost of scientific progress over time. Despite massive funding increases in biomedical research since the 1990s, the rate of significant breakthroughs appears to have slowed, drug approvals have flatlined, and the enterprise's productivity, hampered by growing burdens, has declined. It has become common to speak of Eroom's Law, Moore's Law in reverse, like literally M-O-O-R-E, describing the predictable decline in the number of new drugs approved per $1 billion spent. Since 1950, pharmaceutical R&D efficiency, as measured in new drugs per $1 billion, has fallen roughly 80-fold in inflation-adjusted terms, halving approximately every 9 years. And although NIH's budget has more than doubled since the 1990s, we have not seen a proportional increase in breakthrough treatments, citation impact per dollar spent, or scientific productivity. As a funder and institution builder, the federal government has fallen behind in creating environments where American scientists can do their best work. Evidence shows that the inputs required to sustain past rates of improvement have increased sharply across many fields. A famous study demonstrated that sustaining the historical pace of Moore-style gains in transistor density has required a much larger workforce. Since the early 1970s, the number of researchers needed to double transistor density has risen more than 18-fold, implying a 7% annual decline in ideas productivity. The pattern repeats in agriculture, where research effort has multiplied by factors of 3 to 25 since 1969, depending on the metric, while yield growth remains mostly flat, and in medicine, where the years of life saved per clinical trial peaked in the mid-1980s before falling sharply. Admittedly, slowdown in mature scientific subfields may be inevitable. One might argue that it is natural for the pace of progress to decline once the proverbial low-hanging fruit has been picked. A slowdown could even be read as evidence of success. However, this intuition has repeatedly been proven wrong throughout modern history. And one would expect new mechanisms for sharing information and new ways to compress scientific knowledge to be countervailing forces that speed innovation. Excuse me. Oh, my jaw. Wow. The pattern of apparent stasis in a scientific field exploding into progress, opened by new discovery and changes in scientific institutions, has repeated itself again and again. These punctuated equilibria are, in fact, the essential story of science. Max Planck famously had a professor tell him that physics was nearly as developed as mature fields like geometry, only for Planck's own discoveries in quantum mechanics to completely reorient our understanding of the physical world. Many medical doctors believe their field was reaching perfection in the late 19th century, with one writing, "There cannot always be fresh fields for conquest by the knife." Yet soon, the concurrent transformation of medical education and emergence of research hospitals created the institutional foundations for a broader understanding of disease and for modern medicine as we know it. Repeatedly, the tree has only looked bare from the current perspective. The fruits have not been exhausted at all. We had literally lacked the tools with which to pick them. By adopting new social and material technologies, we can again accelerate the pace of discovery. It falls to us, as it fell to our predecessors, to imagine new machines capable of exploring the endless frontier. Our first step is to strip away the frictions that keep our brightest minds from pursuing the ideas most likely to lead to transformative breakthroughs. Consider a young scientist with a promising proposal for federally funded research and the decades of accumulated institutional bureaucracy she must navigate to seek support in today's enterprise. She spends 2 to 4 months drafting the proposal, assembling preliminary data for the same project requiring funding and navigating her university's internal review process. Excuse me, I gotta take one of my antacid pills. Come on. Give me a second. Oh, we're pushing it. Any beer left? Yep, a little bit. She spends 2 to 4 months drafting the proposal, assembling preliminary data for the same project requiring funding, and navigating her university's internal review process. If she applies to NIH in February, she will be lucky to learn whether she succeeded by the end of the year. Certain grants even have up to a 20-month lead time. That is almost as long as it took for the Boeing 747 jumbo jet to go from the drawing board to production. If she is awarded the grant, she will face mounds of paperwork. From 1991 to January 2025, the federal government imposed at least 270 new requirements on research grants, far outpacing efforts to reduce administrative burdens on researchers. Federally negotiated indirect cost rates now reach 50 to 60% of direct research costs at major institutions, a figure our scientists will have to bear in mind as she drafts her application. While effective rates will often run closer to 40%, this remains a substantial tax on research budgets, shaping what she asks for. Some of this covers legitimate infrastructure she uses every day, but much of it funds administrative expansion at her university that has outpaced the growth of research itself. Senior investigators can delegate paperwork to postdoctoral researchers, but our scientist runs a small lab and has no one to delegate to. She writes grant applications using hours that should have gone to experiments or mentoring students. This is a tax on innovation that does not appear in the federal budget, but costs the nation dearly in foregone breakthroughs. These burdens also create a perverse incentive structure in which scientists who excel at research administration leapfrog those who excel at research performance. The weight falls heaviest on the scientists America needs most. Okay, my stomach acid is acting up pretty bad, so I'm going to do another break. I'll be back in another 15 minutes, and then we'll go another 30 minutes, and then that'll be it for tonight. But, yep, see you in 15. Hold on, it's still doing the thing. Wait, I'll be back in a second. Come on. Okay, enough with the song and dance. Put my face back on. Hi. Alright, final stretch. The academy is a long and difficult road, leading to few stable positions. We should encourage early career scientists at every step of the academic crucible, from undergraduate lab assistant to first faculty job, to pursue big and creative ideas. We should enable and empower scientists who persist into a research career to focus on breakthrough research from the start. But the data suggest we do not. Between 1980 and 2008, the average age of NIH principal investigators rose from 39 to 51, while the average age of new principal investigators rose from 36 to 42, exceeding the average age of Nobel Prize winning contributions in related fields over a comparable period. These patterns lengthen feedback loops and bias careers towards safer, incremental projects. Oh boy, it's actually failing. Excuse me. During the long apprenticeship years, our early career scientist has seen this gradual graying of our research workforce and is likely to adjust her ambitions accordingly. This graph shows the average age of RO1 equivalent first-time investigators. As you can see, 1980, the average investigator was 36, 38, and now, was it 80? 90, that's 10 years, 20 years, about 40 years, a little under, 38. It's not all the same people, but still, the average age is climbing, less opportunities for new blood to enter the field. Now remember, science advances by dead men's shoes. When the adherents of the previous paradigm die out, that's when the new paradigm takes hold, even when the old paradigm doesn't really make sense anymore. Our scientists may accept that these longer training cycles reflect increasing specialization, but these incumbency dynamics also dampen turnover at the frontier. The effect is encapsulated by Planck's famous misquote that science advances one funeral at a time, and is well documented. Studies show that when a star scientist in biomedicine passes unexpectedly, outsider contributions surge into the space the star's network has informally dominated, and those outsider papers are then more likely to become highly cited. At the system level, researchers find that as disciplinary fields grow large, attention ossifies around a fixed canon. New papers are less likely to displace central ideas. New papers are less likely to displace central ideas, and even highly cited ones tend to receive citations in a burst rather than through steady accumulation. Our up-and-coming scientist is further discouraged by the corrosion of the merit principle that once made American research the envy of the world. What began with the NSS... This is where we get to the spicy part. What began with the NSF's broader impacts criterion, which was a reasonable effort to ensure taxpayer funds benefit society, has evolved into a sweeping distortion of the selection process that reduces mobility for the best researchers. Between 2021 and 24, the share of new NSF grants focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives surged from fractions of a percent to more than a quarter. Our scientist has learned the new rules from principal investigators she has worked for, and is tempted to dress up her otherwise excellent technical proposals with ideological language to survive review. Until recently, NASA required research proposals to include plans for furthering inclusion goals, which were to be reviewed by review panels one half composed of diversity, equity, and inclusion professionals. Holy shit! I didn't realize it was that bad. Half? That's absurd. The American scientific establishment has placed politics above merit and performance before. In the 1920s, elite universities implemented quotas limiting Jewish enrollment. Harvard's president worried about a Jewish problem as Jewish students grew from 6 to 22% of the student body. The methods are strikingly familiar: subjective criteria for character and leadership, diversity requirements designed to recruit from regions with fewer Jewish residents, and holistic reviews that obscured the actual basis for decisions. These quotas, maintained for decades, excluded some of the most talented minds in American science. We should learn from this history rather than repeat it. When qualified candidates are passed over for reasons unrelated to their scientific ability, when they are judged for who they are rather than for their ideas, we injure the cause of progress, discovery, and America's scientific competitiveness. Even if the ambitious young scientist successfully navigates the selection gauntlet, she enters an academy whose incentives are severely misaligned with good scientific conduct. Observing older peers, our scientist has learned that taking the long shot to challenge established paradigms may threaten her ability to deliver results and advance to tenure. Yet by the time she achieves tenure, a substantial portion of her most creative years will be behind her. She notices, too, that the tenure and promotion system seems to reward quantity over quality. Cutting work into the smallest publishable units, which researchers call salami slicing, often pays off more than making an ambitious attempt at a transformative discovery. Our scientist knows a better way is possible. Private sector laboratories and startups routinely give young researchers tremendous responsibility, and there they are afforded the opportunity to change the world. Research shows that when investigators receive longer horizon support with tolerance for early failure, they produce portfolios with both more hits and more misses, the signature of genuine exploration. But project-tied, short-cycle grants dominate the federal landscape, and our scientist feels pushed towards safer, more fundable territories. These incentives also help explain why her peers now commonly reach professional independence only in their 40s, not their early 30s as in previous generations. The publication economy amplifies these problems. The young scientist quickly learns that there is a particular narrative pattern common to all articles published in the top journals. Meta-research has documented a structural reduction in novelty in papers and patents, which are less disruptive and less likely to reorient a field than in prior decades. Scientists eschew negative results, even though failed experiments often teach more than successes. Competitive environments amplify this positive results bias, crowding out careful negative findings and tool building that lack tidy narratives. Because the system pays by the paper, it underinvests in public goods like datasets, open source code, and shared engineering infrastructure. The team science now required at Technological Frontier gets abandoned for work that generates individual credit. The reproducibility crisis. As many leaders in American science agree, the research enterprise must learn to value and incentivize reproducibility studies and to hold its members responsible for failures in the scientific process. The reproducibility crisis, particularly acute in the social sciences, has undermined future research and public confidence. In one study that attempted to reproduce 100 psychology studies, fewer than 40 succeeded. The challenge extends across other fields as well. In Alzheimer's research, a celebrated 2009 paper in a top journal presented a promising path to treating the disease. By 2012, other researchers had demonstrated its irreproducibility, and internal reviews at the sponsoring pharmaceutical company terminated drug development based on its findings. Now, my understanding is that sometimes this incident gets overplayed. I'm going to look into it. I'll look up the article that was about it that I read. But I think Scott Alexander, back not too long ago, wrote an article about how actually, it wasn't that bullshit.
I don't think anybody really takes notice of any American research.
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by that, because it is still largely the U.S., in the field of AI especially, it is U.S. institutions that are producing, maybe not the majority, but certainly a plurality of all our scientific progress. By 2012, other researchers had, yet the paper accumulated more than 800 citations, misdirecting research priorities and federal funding for another decade. Its lead author became a university president, and the paper was only finally retracted 15 years after publication, shortly after the lead author resigned, amid a broader investigation into data manipulation in his laboratories. The scientific review process worked, eventually, but far too late. The good scientist knows that knowledge is probabilistic, that evidence accumulates gradually, and that uncertainty is inherent. But the system pressures researchers to deliver results in confident, discrete units. Journal editors want clear narratives. University press offices demand headlines. Nuance dies as a result in the race for attention. This failure has spilled over to political decision-making. With notable and still under-celebrated exceptions, the scientific establishment during the COVID-19 pandemic failed to recognize that science can only describe the world as it is, not the world that ought to be. While it informs policymakers, it cannot determine the best policy, or the trade-offs that should be made. The scientific consensus to shutter schools demonstrate a profound inability to confront uncertainty or to integrate knowledge across specializations. The best available evidence indicated that children were neither at high risk of the disease nor significant vectors of transmission. Conversely, the developmental costs of remote schooling and isolation were entirely predictable. Yet, scientific officialdom produced a closed ranks response, preferring blind consensus over informed dissent. The scientific consensus failed to check its own work, communicate the limits of its own certainty, or remain skeptical of its own assumptions.
I think you'll find they just have the loudest voice and operate within their own echo chambers. There are plenty of AI products around the world that are doing great work.
Maybe. But I mean, if you're building a product that uses AI, you aren't using Mistral. Like, you might use a Chinese model, you might use Kimi, or, GLM, or what's the third one? That really tiny 1 billion model that I was working with? GPM 1 billion, I want to say. I'm not sure. But yeah, it kind of is just the US and China. I know Mistral exists, but all the memeing about, Le Chat Grande. But, I mean, Mistral models work, but they're not exactly frontier. But I don't know, the big cat might show us all up. We don't know. A lack of accountability. Even as our individual scientists continue to do world-changing work, performing miracles that save American lives and defend our homeland, these challenges reflect a systematic breakdown in the lines of accountability that align the scientific enterprise with the public interest. While repeating the mantra that science must be independent of politics, parts of academia have become highly dependent on government funding.
Do you think we could have a situation similar to Dune, where AI is banned?
It's certainly one possibility. I think the most likely scenario is just that we lose control of the future. And, as a lot of companies are doing, we put Claude or GPT more and more in charge of things. And that's not us who are in charge, it's Claude. And the world is going to develop along Claude's preferences and not our own. Or we might say, you know what, let's just not have this shit, kind of like we do with biological weapons, mostly, or chemical weapons. There hasn't been a ton of development in chemical weapons. What else? Like human modification, although the Chinese, I think, are starting to invest in that a little bit. I haven't heard what happened to that guy who modified those 3 kids and then got thrown in prison for it. Because I don't think anything like that happened since. I know there's been a lot of work on cloning. We were all fascinated by Dolly the sheep, and now animal cloning is actually pretty, it's a commercialized technology. Most successful racehorses nowadays are clones. They just have a really good horse, and they just clone the fuck out of that guy. But as Bush understood, federal support for science must be politically accountable. Accountability does not mean dictating how a research agenda is to be executed, nor turning away from the basic research that has long been the wellspring of American prosperity. Quite the opposite. It means ensuring that the system serves the researchers who are its lifeblood, rather than the entrenched interests that have accreted around them. Only those parts of the national research enterprise directly responsive to the political process can prioritize among the many potential avenues of inquiry, fund those that best reflect national priorities, and be checked when the scientific process breaks down. In a self-governing nation of laws and citizens, the federal government elected by the people shall have the ability to determine how to allocate public resources in the public interest. Within that framework, the independent role of federally funded scientists is to design and execute the research and experimentation program that achieves those objectives. A properly accountable system is one that protects their freedom to do so. Originally intended to shield researchers from external political meddling, the invocation of scientific autonomy has too often been inverted. Autonomy, and indeed America's culture of intellectual freedom, remains one of our most valuable scientific assets, but it has been cynically used as a shield against accountability, as scientific institutions are slow to police themselves, or even engage in political meddling of their own, often at the expense of our brightest and most energetic minds. The same scientists who receive grants often serve as the reviewers who dispense them, enforcing a consensus that perpetuates existing biases. Federal funding agencies in particular lack the feedback mechanisms found in the private sector. In venture capital or philanthropy, poor judgment faces the swift discipline of the market. Bad bets lead to insolvency. In the federal sphere, absent deliberate action, there is no penalty for rejecting a breakthrough, nor for funding safe work that changes nothing. A better path forward. One necessary step in restoring accountability to federally supported science is exercising better oversight of scientific funding so that research activities align with the best interests of the American people through the intentional and principled allocation of capital. Our federal agencies distribute approximately $200 billion in annual R&D funding, yet we have no systematic framework for identifying where those dollars could catalyze the greatest scientific reforms, with deference instead given to the same incumbents that consume the funding. This process produces a portfolio that emerges by accident rather than by intentional design. Driving meaningful improvements in our portfolio allocation will require a coordinated effort, but it is not impossible. We already have proof that bold models can dramatically accelerate progress and deliver new scientific opportunities for our researchers. Throughout history, Americans have developed various ways to support scientific progress that depart from the university-based principal investigator-driven grant. These include Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, a leading institution of biological research founded in 1890, and the Institute for Advanced Study, founded in 1930, which gave luminaries like Einstein, Noether, Oppenheimer, and Gödel an opportunity to explore revolutionary ideas. Each provided a home for new kinds of science. Another famous example is DARPA, which gave us GPS, the internet, stealth aircraft, and autonomous vehicles. Rather than relying on consensus-based review panels as the primary decision-making mechanism, DARPA gives individual program managers the power to make bold technological bets and actively curate teams to execute them. Congress has taken notice, creating the Advanced Research Projects Agency for Health, ARPA-H, Advanced Research Projects Agency Energy, ARPA-E, and other similar agencies, collectively representing billions of dollars organized around the program manager model rather than traditional peer review.
I don't personally know Python or any coding. I have been utilizing GPT to help me create a space or product with Codex. I'm about 120 plus hours in, and I have got a working model at the moment.
Well, that's really cool. Let's see, what day of the week is it today? Usually on Thursdays, we actually do AI-powered coding on this stream. So if you feel like hitting the follow button and you feel like coming back, let's see, we usually start stream about, exactly 2 hours ago. So whatever time that is in your time, If you feel like showing up next week, we will probably be doing something like that. Maybe you can pick up some tricks. I've been working with LLMs since 2019 when GPT-2 came out, so I picked up a thing or two over the years. Over the past decade, a growing community, but that is really cool. It's great to see people like picking up, because when this stuff was new, people were like, oh man, everyone's gonna be a coder now. People can just build their own software. And everyone was like, no, people aren't gonna learn to code. They're not gonna build their own software. But no, like some people are. Some people are also building, slop that leaks everybody's account credentials. But, and you can always... The way I like to use AI coding is that you kind of vibe code the first version for requirements development. Like kind of know you have to build it to know what you want to build, So you vibe code the first version and then once you understand what you really want, then you sit down and build the final version.
I've always been an ideas person, and now I have an outlet.
Hell yeah. I mean, I'm kind of the same way. All this thing you see on the screen, that was like, I would not have been able to develop that without the help of AI. Over the past decade, a growing community of researchers, philanthropists, and policymakers has turned the lens of scientific inquiry onto science itself, asking precisely how we can reduce frictions, align incentives, increase accountability, and inject more dynamism into the scientific enterprise. This field, often called metascience or the science of science, has begun generating rigorous evidence of what actually works, both by studying why models like DARPA or the Institute for Advanced Study succeed, and by running controlled experiments on new approaches. Philanthropies and federal agencies are now deliberately applying these insights and piloting new organizational forms to address gaps the traditional academic system cannot fill. For instance, NIH has recently created a metascience office, and the new Directorate for Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships, TIP, within NSF, has been experimenting with alternatives to traditional peer review, designing and executing controlled experiments and alternative funding mechanisms in partnership with metascience researchers. These scattered successes confirm the possibility of systematically redesigning how we organize, fund, and conduct science. Realizing that potential will require us to understand how the nature of scientific work has changed, what new institutional forms those changes demand, and what funding mechanisms can best support them. The answers will not come from any single reform, but from building the capacity for continuous experimentation, for applying the scientific method to the scientific enterprise itself. All right, that is all the vocal endurance I have for tonight. We are 40 out of 123 pages in, so we will have to return to this document at a later date, but it's been an incredible honor to be invited into your homes to entertain you tonight. Thank you for the follow, Briarius, something like that. I appreciate y'all coming out. Let's look for someone to raid on YouTube. Add a redirect. Let's see, I saw Celestium was on. Is she still live? Celestium VT? No, she's not. Okay, who is? Let me have a little look-see here. What are we thinking here? Let's go to YouTube, look who's live. What about Zatris? Zaytris. Nope, can't raid into her, but we can raid into J. So we'll go for her. For him, rather.
All good, mate. Thanks for your time. I will try and get back here next week. Have a good evening.
Hell yeah, look forward to seeing you. And for the folks on Twitch, I'll send you over to Miss Pippa. Have fun with Miss Pippa Pipkin. She's playing Disco Elysium. I'm excited to watch it. I got to catch up with the VOD. But that's all for tonight, and I will see you all next time.